This is a worksheet on writing equations with lines. This is worksheet number 1. The direction says, for each of the following, write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form and in standard form. So notice that there's going to be two equations. The equation written in slope-intercept form and the equation written in standard form. And it says show all work to receive full credit. So number 1, it says find the equation with a line that contains this point and has this slope. All right, so let's look at number 1. So number 1, so you're told that the equation, the line contains this point and it has this slope. So remember there are two approaches you can use. So approach number 1, some of you probably use this first approach. So approach number 1 is where you use the slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. In order to use this form, you have to know the slope of that line and the y-intercept. All you know is the slope. So remember the slope here is m equals -3. So there's your slope. So right now all I know is that I have y equals -3x plus b. And I got to somehow find what that y-intercept is. Well, to find the y-intercept, which you don't know, because remember the y-intercept, this is not the y-intercept. The y-intercept, the x-coordinate is 0, so that's not the y-intercept. That point is in, if you remember, +6, -2, that's in the 4th quadrant. All right, so it does not lie on the y-axis. But to find the y-intercept, you're going to use the fact that this point here is 6, -2. So this is your x, this is your y, and you're just going to substitute that information into your equation because you're trying to solve for b, so you need to know an x and a y that's on that line, and you do. This point's on that line. So in place of x and y, I'm going to substitute these numbers, these values. So y is -2, so I get -2 equals -3 times x, which is 6, plus b, right? And then -3 times 6 is -18, so I get -2 equals -18 plus b. Adding 18 to both sides and combining like terms, I get my y-intercept is going to equal -2 plus 18 is 16. So now you know your y-intercept, so therefore your answer in slope-intercept form, okay, listen carefully, the answer in slope-intercept form, because remember you have to write it in both slope-intercept form and standard form. So slope-intercept form, remember slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, right? And so over here I know the slope, and now I know the y-intercept. So the answer is going to be y equals -3, x, and then b is 16, positive 16. So there's the answer in slope-intercept form. Okay? Now remember what standard form is now. So listen carefully. Standard form, I'm going to write it here. Standard form is where you have all the variables on one side, so ax plus by equals c, and a, b, and c are integers. So no fractions, no decimals, integers. Okay? So first thing you got to do is, let me go ahead and rewrite this over because this is what you have. You have y equals -3x plus 16. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it in standard form. So to put it in standard form, let's bring the variables to one side. So we're going to add 3x to both sides. And so, and let's go ahead and put the x term first. It doesn't matter, but as long as a, b, and c are integers, you can put the y first or the x. Doesn't matter, but let's just put the x term first. So I get 3x plus y equals 16, and there's your answer. Okay? So this is in standard form. So this is standard form. That's important you see this. But I want to say something else, though, and this is important. So remember right here where we had y equals -3x plus 16? So if someone wanted to subtract y from both sides, that's basically, it's okay. You can do that. Mathematically, this is true. Y minus y is 0. You got to remember that 0, though, equals -3x minus y plus 16, and then bring the 16 to the other side. Bring the 16 to the other side. You get 0 subtract 16 is a -16 equal, this is 0, -3x minus y. That's a y. And then I'm going to use the transitive property. So if negative 16 equals negative 3x minus y, then negative 3x minus y must also equal negative 16. The point is this. Someone else for standard form, that's a negative right here, someone else for standard form could have had this instead. All right? So in terms of your answer, the equation of the line in slope-intercept form, all of you have to have this answer. Y equals negative 3x plus 16. There's only one answer for standard form, one equation for this problem in standard form. I'm sorry, slope-intercept form, excuse me, slope-intercept form. Y equals negative 3x plus 16. But for standard form, there are two possible answers. 3x plus y equals 16, or negative 3x minus y equals negative 16. And then we saw how someone who had this answer would have done. They would have subtracted y from both sides and subtract 16, giving you that answer. But I also want you to notice right away, you know that regardless of which one you did, you know that the other one has to be correct, because if I multiply, remember what you do to one side, you do to the other, right? So if I take the left side, multiply by negative 1, I have to take the other side, multiply by negative 1. So negative a negative 1 times 3x is a negative 3x, negative 1 times y is a negative y, and 16 times negative 1 is a negative 16. Okay? All right, so that was approach number 1, right? Okay, so approach number 2. So someone that used approach number 2 would have used the point-slope form. Point-slope form. All right, so I know the slope and I know a point. So a point of that line is 6, negative 2. So there's your x1, there's your y1. So I'm going to just take those values and substitute into this formula right here. Y minus y1, which is a negative 2, equals the slope, which is negative 3, times x minus x1. Rewriting y subtract negative 2 as y plus 2, I get y plus 2. And distributing, I get negative 3x. A negative 3 times a negative 6 is a positive 18. Getting y by itself, subtract 2 from both sides, I get y equals negative 3x plus 16. All right, so there's your slope-intercept form. Notice the same answer, right? Same answer. Now, to get it in, now we have to write this. Now we have to write in standard form, right? But we already did that, so I'm not going to do it all over because it's the same thing we did this. So once you get to that point here, to write in standard form, you're going to bring all the variables to one side, constants to the other, either to the left or to the right, does not matter. All right. So in standard form, you're going to say 3x plus y equals 16, or negative 3x minus y equals negative 16. That's standard form. So this is slope-intercept form. This is standard form. Okay, so once you get to that point to write in standard form, that's the same thing you did here. So you're going to add 3x to both sides, or someone else could have subtracted y from both sides and then subtract 16 from both sides. Does not matter. Okay? All right, so that's number 1. Okay, now let's look at number 2. All right, so number 2, this time you have this point, so you have the line that goes to this point and has this slope. So let's go ahead and use approach number 1. So approach number 1. All right, approach number 1. You have, so we're going to use slope-intercept form for that one. And I have this. I have y equals the slope, which I know. So remember, this is your slope. M equals 5/4. So I have y equals 5/4 x. That's a 5. Plus b. So I got to find b. To find b, I'm going to use this point here. So a point on that line is 12, 3. So there's your x, there's your y. You're going to substitute that. So y is 3. So I get 3 equals 5/4 times 12 plus b. 5/4 of 12. Let me go ahead and rewrite this over. Okay, 5/4 of 12. So you can say 4 to 4 is 1. 4 to 12 is 3. 5 times 3 is 15. So I get 3 equals 15 plus b. Subtract 15 from both sides. I get b equals negative 12. So there's your y-intercept. So now you're in slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form. You're going to say y equals the slope, which is 5/4, right? 5/4, x, and then b is negative 12, so minus 12. Okay? Now, that's getting the slope, that's getting the equation of that line in slope-intercept form. All right, now, from here, you're going to put it in standard form. But let's go ahead and use approach number 2 next, because we'll get the same thing, and then we'll get it in standard form for both approaches at the same time. So approach number 2 is point slope form. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So there's the slope, there's your point. Point is 12, 3. So this is x1, this is y1. So we're going to substitute those values into the point slope form. So y subtract y1, which is 3, equals the slope, 5/4, times x subtract x1, which is 12. Distributing, I get y subtract 3 equals 5/4 times x, and then 5/4 of a negative 12 would be a negative, and remember 5/4 times 12, right? 5/4 times 12. 4 into 4 is 1. 4 into 12 is 3. 5 times 3 is 15. So you get 15. And then adding 3 to both sides, and combine like terms, I get y equals 5/4 x. Negative 15 and 3 is a negative 12. So notice in slope-intercept form, see this is slope-intercept form, we get the same slope-intercept form, we get the same answer. Okay? Now once it's in slope-intercept form, then you're going to write it in the standard form. Okay, so now we're going to write the standard form. So both approaches, you're going to put it in slope-intercept form. And now let's take that slope-intercept form, which is y equals 5/4 x minus 12, and now let's write it in standard form. Okay, so remember, standard form, you cannot have any fractions, so they must all be integers. So let's go ahead and find the LCD first. So we're going to multiply both sides by the least common denominator. So the least common denominator here is 4. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 4 to get rid of those fractions. So I get 4 times y equals 4 times 5/4 x minus 12. So what you do to one side, you do to the other. Now I'm going to distribute the 4 here. So I get 4y equals 4 times 5/4 x is just 5x. Minus, and then 4 times 12 is 48. Okay? And then notice, no fractions. All these coefficients and the constants are integers. So now to put it in standard form, I can do one of two things. I can bring the variables to the left or the variables to the right. Does not matter. So let's go ahead. Right here, we're going to do this. I'm just rewriting this over. Someone at this point could have said, well, I'm just going to bring the 5x to the other side. And that's fine. Perfectly okay. So your answer in standard form, if you did that, would be this. 5x plus negative 5x plus 4y equal negative 48. Okay? Someone else could have done this. Let me go ahead and rewrite this over. Someone else could have said, well, I'm going to subtract 4y from both sides. That's perfectly fine. 4y minus 4y is 0 equals 5x minus 4y minus 48. But remember, you got to have variable on one side, constants on the other. So now you're going to add 48 to both sides. So you get 0 plus 48 is 48 equal 5x minus 4y, right? And then transitive property, let's go ahead and put the variables on the left. So if 48 equals 5x minus 4y, then 5x minus 4y must equal 48. Okay? I want you to notice, though, that those equations are equivalent because if you multiply this left side by negative 1 and this left side by negative 1, you get this. Negative 1 times negative 5x is a positive 5x. Negative 1 times 4y is a negative 4y. And a negative 48 times negative 1 is a positive 48. Okay? All right. So notice the way we approach this. Some of you would have used this approach to get it in slope-intercept form. Some of you would have used this approach to get it in slope-intercept form. But once you get to that form, then you got to write it in standard form, because that's something else they wanted you to do, write in standard form. So that's where you have to make sure that you don't have any fractions. So you're going to multiply. If you do, you're going to multiply both sides with the LCD, and then you would bring the variables one side, constant to the other. Notice, though, that there are two possible answers for standard form. They're equivalent, but they are written differently. All right, so let's go ahead and write down that answer. So for number 2, everyone would have had this as the answer for slope-intercept form, y equals 5/4 x minus 12. For standard form, some of you would have had this, and some of you would have had this. So for standard form, some of you would have had negative 5x plus 4y equal negative 48, or some would have had 5x minus 4y equals 48. Okay? All right, so that was number 2. Now let's look at number 3. So here's number 3. All right, so same process. So in number 3, you want to find the equation of a line that contains this point and has this slope. So we know this is m right here. M is negative 1/2. So let's do approach number 1, just like we did in the other 2. Approach 1, that's slope-intercept form. And so in order to use slope-intercept form, I need to know the slope and the y-intercept. I know the slope, but I don't know the y-intercept. I've got to eventually find that. So I have y equals negative 1/2 x plus b. So I know a point on that line, which is negative 8, negative 3. So that's going to be, so if I'm going to find b, I need to know x and y, which I do. I know a point on that line, negative 8, negative 3. So there's your x, there's your y. Substitute that into here. I get y is negative 3 equals negative 1/2 times x, which is negative 8, plus b. Negative 1/2 times a negative 8 is a positive 4, right? So negative 3 equals 4 plus b. Subtracting 4 from both sides, I find the y-intercept to be a negative 7. Negative 3 to negative 4 is a negative 7. So therefore, the answer in slope-intercept form is y equals the slope, negative 1/2, x, and then b is negative 7. So y equals negative 1/2 x minus 7. So that's slope-intercept form. If you had used approach 2, you would have gotten the same answer for slope-intercept form. This time we're going to use a point-slope form, though. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. We know the slope, and we know a point on that line. A point of that line is negative 8, 3. But this time we're going to let negative 8 be x sub 1, and negative 3 be y sub 1. So I get y minus a negative 3 equals the slope times x minus a negative 8. Y subtract negative 3. Simplify this before you distribute. So I get y plus 3 equals negative 1/2 times x plus 8. Now distribute. So y plus 3 equals negative 1/2 times x is a negative 1/2 x. A negative 1/2 times a positive 8 is a negative 4. And then finally subtracting 3 from both sides to get y by itself, I get y equals negative 1/2 x, a negative 4, and a negative 3 is a negative 7. So notice that's a slope-intercept form. Regardless of which approach you use, you all get the same equation for slope-intercept form. Now, once you get to that point, you're going to write this in standard form. Okay, so let me go ahead and rewrite this over. So you have y equals negative 1/2 x minus 7. So standard form, first of all, you don't want any fractions. You want all these coefficients of x, y, and the constant to be integers. So I have to clear the fractions. So the LCD here is 2. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So let me go ahead and rewrite this side. Notice I'm going to put this side in parentheses because all these have to be multiplied by 2. So you will multiply both sides by 2. Now you're going to distribute. And when I distribute, I get 2y equals 2 times a negative 1/2 x is a negative x, right? And then 2 times a negative 7 is a negative 14. And now from here, you can go two approaches, two different ways. You can bring the variables to the left or the variables to the right. So let's bring the variables to the left first. So let me go ahead and rewrite it like this. I'm just rewriting this over. Okay, so I'm going to add x to both sides. Notice negative x, I'm going to add x, right? That's an x. So I get x plus 2y, put the x first, I'm sorry, x plus 2y equal, and the 0, you get negative 14. So there's your answer in standard form. You have any fractions, no decimals. So x, the coefficient of x is of 1, that's an integer. Coefficient of y is a positive 2, that's an integer. And your constant's a negative 14, that's an integer. Over here, let me go ahead and rewrite this over. So someone else could have done this. They could have said, I'm going to bring the variables to the right-hand side. Perfectly fine. 2y minus 2y is 0 equals, let's put the x term first. So negative x, then minus 2y, then minus 14. And then, but remember, you got to bring the constant to the other side now. So add 14 to both sides. So I get 14 equal, this is 0, negative x minus 2y. And then we know that if 14 equals negative x minus 2y, then negative 2x minus 2y must equal 14, just a transitive property. And, okay, so we're just transposing both sides. Okay, and so therefore, here's the other way to write the equation in standard form. Okay, and so therefore, writing down the answer. So for slope-intercept form, all of you would have had this answer, this equation, y equals negative 1/2 x minus 7. And then depending on whether you brought the variables to the right or the variables to the variables to the left or the variables to the right, you have had two equations that look different, but they are equivalent. And so you would have x plus 2y equal negative 14, or someone else could have negative x minus 2y equal 14, right? Because notice all you're doing to see this is basically just take, let's say this one, multiply both sides by negative 1. So x times negative 1 is a negative x, 2y times negative 1 is a negative 2y, a negative 14 times negative 1 is a positive 14, right? Okay. All right, so that is the key to this worksheet.